Hi, I'm Stephenie Carr from Royal Servants. In one of our first online devos a few weeks back, Matt Swanson talked about the importance of lament when we encounter seasons of frustration and loss and grief. And I wanted to give a lament part 2 of sorts today. If you're like me, praying for the world regularly feels like a tall task, but now even more so. One of the things that's becoming more and more clear as our time of quarantine continues is that everything seems amplified. It seems more of what it felt like in a normal time. For parents, we find ourselves thrust into that role 24/7, which is also true for siblings. For those that are single or living alone, they might be feeling a sense of isolation even more. Those that are at risk health-wise may be feeling even more vulnerable to infection. Those on the margins of society, the homeless populations, those living at or near the poverty levels, these are even more stressful and seemingly impossible circumstances. So many of our circumstances are amplified. This is true across the globe. This is truly a we problem, as there's hardly a corner of the globe that isn't being touched in some way by this worldwide pandemic. It is precisely for those that are experiencing increased need and insecurity right now that I want to encourage us to lament for. And this is also a biblical model of lament. Oftentimes in the Bible, we find the phrase, a lament concerning fill in the blank, the princes of Israel, Saul, Tyre, etc., which means that when we are feeling helpless and overwhelmed when faced with a global pandemic that we know is affecting not just us, but others more vulnerable than us, and we find ourselves grieving and feeling that there's so little that we can actually do to change that on a global scale, we can go to God and lament concerning these people. It is in lament that we address our great big God, a God big enough to hold even this. And we put our trust in the God who sees even the very sparrow. Our lament assumes that God is present and God can help. And at the same time, our lament does not hold back from our questions, our protest, our fear, and our acknowledgement that things are not the way they are supposed to be. When we cannot act, we can plead for God to act on behalf of the innocent, the victim, and the sufferer. The 3 movements of a lament, just for review, are these. Number 1, that we address God, which assumes that He is present and that He hears, which in and of itself puts God in His rightful place. Number 2, we have space to give voice to our lament, that things are not the way they are supposed to be. And number 3, the and yet turn. Express how you can, or how you even want to, still trust that God has got this. And I'd encourage you to share your lament below if you're feeling so inspired, and we can together bring these things before God.